exactly on schedule. And we will continue for about 30 minutes initially, then have a coffee break. We'll excuse a couple members who have to go to another meeting. And then after the coffee break, we'll continue at 10:45 up until 11:25. So we have time for a very thorough discussion. Having said that, we want input, we want ideas, but we don't want long speeches. There can be questions, there could be comments, but if the comments get into a speech, I will ask you to do it during the coffee break to continue that. But we do have ample time for a lot of people to speak. Who would like to begin? Susie Sudirman, you'll be next. Susie is one of our USINDO advisors. This was not previously set up.
Good morning. I'm Susie Sudirman from Universitas Indonesia. I was just wondering, always with cooperations between two countries, we in the university do not feel your presence. So my angst would be involving how do you share the ideas so that people have purchase over this wonderful program? And the other question is, how about indigenous group? Are they included in this sort of like high-level meeting between two nations? Because first you have to involve the universities and you have to involve local people. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I think we try to do that in a lot of different ways. Through meetings like this, we would like to have more meetings like this. Through information we put out on websites. Through meetings we have, in the U.S. we have a lot of meetings with stakeholders often on different topics related to climate and environment because those areas cover so many subjects. So we may have a meeting with forestry stakeholders or a meeting with stakeholders who are more interested in water issues. So that's sort of how we do it. So I think it's through this meeting process, it's through contact with our staff who are very involved in these, and each agency has ways of doing outreach. On the indigenous groups, I can't speak for Indonesia, and I would ask my colleagues to address that, but on the U.S. side, we do have meetings with indigenous, in our country, Native Americans, through meetings, and also through different individuals in the agency who do outreach to those groups. So I think the issue always is, how can you make it an efficient interaction, and how can you do enough of it? And so we're always trying to improve that.
I might just add that one concrete example. I should have mentioned earlier our MCC Compact Program, Millennium Challenge Corporation. Troy Ray is here representing that, which is a $600 million program that will, more than half of which will go toward green prosperity, promoting economic development that's environmentally sustainable. And one of the pilot provinces is Jambi, where this is just getting started. And so up in Jambi, we meet regularly with NGO groups, which include a number of indigenous people. So often at the local level, where we have specific projects, I think it's true for USAID as well, at the local level, we're doing a lot of outreach to the local communities.
On the Indonesian side, I think the commission where we are, the National Commission for Climate Change, has among its members 17 ministers and scores of what we call PSL, Pusat Studi Lingkungan, including in University of Indonesia. And we have regular sessions, but not in the name of this GCM. It is just business as usual, where we socialize the climate change agenda through ministries involved, namely in the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of other ministries of Forestry, where we try to educate or to involve the students and the academicians into the climate change agenda. Of course, it needs more legwork. Indonesia is a big country, and nowadays, there's few years, we are not very much focused on the climate change, as I regret. And we hope to make more advances with the next presidency, which Pampukki will decide who will be the president, and I think when they make headways, you can answer that.
Ambassador, can I add? Bu Susie, we engage the universities at different levels, as Pak Rachmat mentioned. At the National Council on Climate Change, we had a network of about 40 universities who met half a dozen times already in the last few years. And there is another growing different set of universities that involved in the climate change negotiations. They kept on attending various UNFCCC meetings and bring the latest thinking at the international level to their colleague researchers. The plan is to strengthen this networking of universities in Kalimantan, in Papua, in Nusa Tenggara Timur, Barat, and outer islands provinces, so that the ownership can be within the university. It's not there yet, but the meetings have started. At least there are a dozen events. On the issue of indigenous people, we are approaching it, to add on Pak Rachmat, not only as a program of ministries, program of Minister of Environment, Minister of Forestry, and others, but also in the new setting of the RED agency, there will be a board, an advisory board, on top of the head of the RED agency that has a permanent seat of indigenous community association. There are about a few individuals who will sit there, and one of it is the representations of indigenous community. It's a commitment that we have made since 2010, and hopefully we can materialize it in the next few weeks. So by structural design, by process, the indigenous community will have full access to what's going on. We will have to manage so that there will not be a conflict of interest. However, we are open to all kinds of possibilities.
Warif Jayanto Basori, the Dr. Sutomo Press Institute, Lembaga Pers Dr. Sutomo, it's a journalism school based in Jakarta. 2 questions for the Assistant Secretary, 1 for Chairman Witoelar. But before that, 2 short comments. One relates to what Pak Agus Purnomo stated on 5 mitigation measures being conducted by the Indonesian government. We arrived today with blue sky, clear day, but our neighbors in Singapore have haze yesterday and today, and also our neighbors in Malaysia are going through this same haze situation. Flights out of Pekanbaru had to be canceled, Pekanbaru and Riau, because of burnings in forests and peatlands in the island of Sumatra as well as in Kalimantan. Now, one point that Pak Agus mentioned was, of the 5 mitigation measures, is zero burning. Now, this is a comment, this is an input. Hopefully the work group would put serious discussion on how to arrive at zero burning, so that we don't get complaints coming from our dear neighbors across the strait. The second point is on moratorium. You say that this has been extended. It looks fine on paper, but on the ground, to what extent is this being implemented? Last May 2012, my institute conducted a journalism workshop on covering climate change in East Kalimantan. And one local official admitted, when we talked about the moratorium, the issuance of new permits, he admitted, without my asking, without the floor asking him, he admitted that new permits were still being issued at the local level. So another point is, how would you be able to get into practice what you say is this could be a test case on the MRV mechanism? How would you make that work on the ground? Yeah. So 2 comments. Now for my questions. Madam Assistant Secretary. President Obama made compelling comments on climate change in his inaugural address, January 21. We will respond to the threat of climate change knowing that the failure to do so would betray our children and future generations. Correct me if I'm wrong, Secretary Jones. President Obama has pledged to use executive orders and his unilateral authority to reduce greenhouse gas emissions if legislation stalls in Congress. Question one, based on his statements, does President Obama plan to accept an international legally binding agreement to reduce carbon emissions? Question two, short of adherence to the Kyoto Protocol, now in its second commitment period, what kind of executive orders can President Obama issue relating to climate change? And to Pak Rachmat, when the UN Conference on Climate Change meets in Warsaw, COP19, December 2013, this year. What position would you like the U.S. to take after President Obama's profound statements on climate change? Terima kasih, Pak.
Let me respond to comments from Pak Warif. Yes, Pak Warif, all that you said is true, is recognized. There are still problems of implementations on the ground, but permits that we are controlling is very much the permits where we use the terms permit, legal permits, that requires the signature of Minister of Forestry. So there are local permits, and many of the local permits are actually the next phase of permit. Once the Minister of Forestry issued a permit, then the locals can do some annual issuance of local permits. Some of the permits are illegal because they are issuing it on an area that's not supposed to be developed, and illegal activities is the domain of law enforcement. Police and district attorney are having a field day when they find violations of regulations. We have plenty of head of the districts and governors who are in jail when they are trying to abuse their power. And this will continue to be because there are new batches of leaders coming in that they probably are not aware of their limits of authority. There are also cancellations of local permits or local regulations. Minister of Home Affairs annually cancel about 1,000 regulations issued by the local authorities. So it's an ongoing challenge, no doubt about it, but the political commitment is firm. We would like to protect the remaining primary forest and peatland. Some of the NGOs in this room are not happy. They would like to protect all kinds of existing trees. Yes, it's important, but no, we don't have the ability to protect every single tree. So we try to protect the remaining primary forest and good condition peatland.
Yes, you are correct. President Obama, in both his inauguration speech and then in the State of the Union address, did emphasize his commitment to taking action, any actions he can take, to address the very serious problem of climate change. So yes, he has gone out and said that. And the two pieces to that question that you asked, there are many things that can be done through executive order in the United States. And the way executive orders work is the President is able to state actions that the many agencies need to take. And if you look at the agencies in the U.S. that could take actions that could have an impact on either adapting to or mitigating against climate, there are many. Some of them are sitting up here at this table. Certainly the Environmental Protection Agency looks at issues regarding air quality and emissions. They look at air and water. They look at industry regulations. Also, we have agencies such as NOAA, which look at regulations regarding oceans and what are happening in oceans around our shores, and try to work internationally to look at other things, because we also know ocean acidification is part of this issue as well. We have agencies like the Department of Interior who look at the national parks and behaviors and how those lands are managed. So all of these various agencies who have authorities over different parts of the United States and all of its processes, the President has the possibility to take action through each of those agencies. So there's a comprehensive way that the President can act. If Congress is still having a debate and we're not able to move forward as quickly as we would hope. So the President and his team are very much engaged on this right now and looking at every possible avenue of action that can be taken. So that's the first question. The second one regarding an international agreement, we look forward to the discussions that are now underway, those in Bonn and those getting ready as we go forward into the next COP in Poland. And I think where we are now, I think is the international community is working hard to look at an agreement that will treat all countries similarly. All the major emitters will need to make commitments, and these will be based on national circumstances and where countries are, and so we are very optimistic about this. It is, I think it involves 193 countries, and so we don't know where this agreement is going to end up and what it's going to look at the end of the day. But we are committed to this process, and we think the Durban platform that was negotiated, the past COP, is a very productive way forward, and we are committed to making it a successful negotiation.
Pak Arif and Madam Kerri and our friends, I agree to what has been said before. For one thing, I'd like to express my belief or my understanding that President Obama and President Witoelar share the same concepts on climate change mitigation. And likewise, the general public of US and Indonesia also share the same. The problem is with us negotiators. I plead guilty because I'm the chief negotiator of Indonesia. And my counterpart there, among others, is Mr. Todson, who's a colleague of Kerri-Ann, who has binding him, inhibiting him with certain steps in the Parliament, in the Congress, and in the Senate. Having said that, there's goodwill expressed, and like it has been expressed, we are not trying to find a way to overcome the difficult negotiating positions. It is not a secret that some words are very poisonous, which is for our side. It is a very favorite word. It is CBDR, common but differentiated responsibility, and forgive me for quoting that Todson says, I will throw up if I hear that again. So that is, we are so familiar with each other, so we are very forthright. And so we try to look for other avenues to get to a good understanding, to a common platform to fight the climate change. And just for a small correction, it is not December, it is November in Warsaw. I hope it's not that cold in Warsaw, in Poland. And we have some possibilities that we can come to a common platform, which is if we kind of modify the CBDR, which is actually the pride of Indonesia because it was born in Bali, conference COP13, with the context of everybody is responsible, and that is, we term it being applicable to all. Indonesia is pro being applicable to all the states because we realize that if only the non-annexed countries are obligated to cut down on emissions, the world will still go under. So Indonesia, that like I have mentioned and Papuki also mentioned, in Pittsburgh in 2009, the President has committed Indonesia to a voluntary cut in emissions. And that is the gist of the problem, that developing nations also cut down on their emissions. So it is applicable to all. With that in mind, I've been talking with my counterparts in the US delegation and Eka and Turkey, also from Bonn, trying to find a way, a formula to make it in a binding global solution, which is still in the pipeline, but we have still some years to go. 2015 will be the time where that has to become effect. So I'm sorry to say that it is not a very direct measure to overcome the climate change. We need some years to come to an agreement, but we are getting there eventually. I hope the climate destruction will wait until we come there. Thank you.
I had a question about the MCC, the aid going to Jambi. How is that different from the support, the financial support and aid given from Singapore and Malaysia in the past few years? Is it different? Are you looking at different areas, or are you building on the existing aid that was given by other ASEAN countries? Thank you.
The aid takes a slightly different form for a very important reason, which is that it is implemented through the government of Indonesia body. Now that being said, the entire program has drawn on lessons that we have learned and that many others in this room have learned about what would make the delivery of such assistance more effective. It's based on the premise that addressing these deep-seated issues rests with community-level action. And so as Ambassador Marcial has said, it's very important. We've spent well over 2 years understanding the context and building upon local knowledge in order to build this program into what we think will be a successful delivery model to address these major issues around climate change and supporting economic growth in an environmentally responsible fashion.
John Marsley, corporate advisor, but right now I represent Organda DKI. Organda is Land Transportation Organization of Jakarta. I'm vice chairman in charge of Biskota city buses. We are the largest contributor of air pollution in Jakarta. The minute you wake up in the morning, when you go out of the door, we hurt you. That's for sure. And for 20 years, ever since I've been concerned about air pollution, but only until the last 6 months, I really understand what has happened. I'm sorry to say, government talks only. Like Ibu say, never reach us. We have heard government is trying to do, has been trying to do a lot of things for the last 20 years. Now, I represent an organization called Metro Mini. Recently, they forced me to become CEO to make $1 a year, and then I accepted because I have a great concern and passion by air pollution. Now, this is what happened, the situation. We are required by the government now to refleet 3,300 buses. As you know, there are about 12,000 buses, including minibus, microbuses like microlet, they call it here, running around, contributing the worst air pollution ever in the city of Jakarta. Yeah, we plead guilty. But look at the situation here. Metro Mini is forced to charge only 2,000 rupiah, okay, per trip. And how can they survive? I have 1,200 entrepreneurs, which I have to salute. They've been in business for 25 years. They survive, but they do not have sustainable business plan. I'll tell you in a minute why. not only they do not have proper management, but they're treated as if they're running business as usual. They get taxed by the government, they have to pay import tax if they import, just like anyone else. But at the same time, they are forced to serve public. Okay. Now, my question to all of you here, especially those who are concerned, how can you help us to refleet 12,000 units of public transports in Jakarta such that it will eliminate the greatest air pollution problem in the city? Now, our proposal is very simple. Treat us special if you want us to survive and sustain the business. That is, we are going to use gas-powered and electricity-powered buses. We've been talking to a US company, which I cannot disclose the company's name, and a Chinese company to do the body of the bus, but the US company is going to supply the engine. It's either gas or electric engine, which are much more efficient than the existing gas engines which you see in Transjakarta. So number one, we would like to have like tax incentive. We want to be treated like a business you know. We don't want subsidy. We don't need subsidy. We want to be treated, you know, give us tax incentive. You know how much we have to pay for a gas or powered, gas-powered or electricity engine? They treat us just like any commercial luxury goods. Can you imagine? 40%. So my members cannot survive. So we go back to solar. So if you see the Kopaja running around in the city, the Kopaja is using the solar powered engine. So it's going back to same square, you know. It will not help the air pollution. It will not help reduce air pollution. So that's number one. We want tax incentive. Number two, we want equal treatment with Transjakarta. Now they discriminate against us. Transjakarta is treated as if government-owned enterprise, and they have tax incentive, and they're subsidized by the city of Jakarta. We don't have subsidy. Okay? So this message is very clear. We are from the field player. We want the government to listen. How can you help us? Thank you very much.
Very well put.
My comments will be from sideways because I'm not directly empowered. I'm concerned, but not empowered to overcome the problems that you have stated. First of all, I'd like to extend my sympathies for the situation. And just as a historical note, when I was Minister of Environment a few weeks ago, I did suggest a moratorium on new vehicles in Indonesia, because it is not only the buses that are the culprits, it's the private cars and the motorcycles. They emit a lot of emissions. But then again, we should not look at Jakarta as Indonesia, because Indonesia has maybe 5,000 cities and maybe a score of mega cities to which we are victims to this kind of pollution. So it is the Minister of Finance role to give tax breaks and fiscal advantages to the sector of transportation. I'm anticipating that the Commission's officer in terms of transportation is still in Bonn, so but the next best thing is I have my scientist in Farhan to kind of explain what's going on. But there could be, from the Commission side, a way out eventually where we can introduce or where we can install a system of CDM, where it's listed in the UNFCCC, but that is the compensation for reduction of emissions, which could be employed eventually, if we can have that in place, then the facilities extended can offset kind of the things that you're suffering from. Prof, can you explain this? Yes, that is why I started by saying my apologies, because I'm not directly empowered to do that. I mean, it is the Ministry of
Situation. We are forced to go back to solar, so it's not going to reduce air pollution because they don't have enough filling station for gas. Even Transjakarta has got a big problem. Can you imagine they have to ngantri, they have to key in like 4 hours to get gas. And a lot of drivers do not get enough sleep. It's the big problem here. Thank you.
Perhaps my response is not really directly to what you are asking for, because I'm not in charge for that. But let me give some perspective on what is happening now in terms of how we engage to the process. First is there will be an initiative running by the Ministry of Transport together to develop what we call as the sustainable transport management through the climate financing. So this is one of the first Indonesia national appropriate mitigation submitted into the UNFCCC, starting with the small cities. And of course, part of the activities, the scope is also include the kind of issues on the incentive and tax and so on. Second, I think the challenging issues, as also Ibu Susie mentioned, that the engagement of the scientific community. In fact, part of the initiative, we also established the Indonesia Climate Change Center, where also in this forum we engage on in-depth issues of, for example, on the peatland issues. We start with the definition of peatland, mapping, incentive, as well as the spatial planning in one comprehensive package. So this is I mean, what the initiatives can also take some issues like Bapak just mentioned. But I share the concern, and perhaps the next time we need to also ask the Ministry of Transport.
I'd like to continue with the next question, please.
Just continuing from the previous tax incentive, my previous experiences in the infrastructure industry, so there's transportation, architecture, and lots of that. And I was wondering, I know that in the States there's tax incentive program for architecture building, skyscrapers or town planning, and my colleague just also mentioned in China there is eco-cities requirement. So I know that for sure, they can hear me. I know that for sure in Indonesia we don't have that tax incentive program yet, and a lot of business operators, especially developers, they are very reluctant to participate in sustainability reformation simply because it's way too expensive and the government is not compensating anything. So I also have asked Professor Witoelar, and he said no as well. So what's going to happen? Because nobody is going to be interested in participating in these kind of things. And marine ports are very important to be involved in such tax incentive regulations because they share the carbon as well. REDD, skyscrapers, town planning. Maybe you can share the framework of the U.S. tax incentive regulations or whatever packages you offer. Or if not, do you have any grassroots climate change program for remote areas implementation that would be easier to execute via NGO? Because waiting for the government is just going to be forever. Thank you. Thank you for that question. There are a number of different U.S. government programs that span multiple government agencies to deal with all of the different types of tax incentives and investment and efficiency that you just mentioned. So building new buildings, retrofitting existing buildings, transportation sector, including ports. Unfortunately, our Department of Energy colleagues who are engaged in many of those programs are not here today, and I'm certainly not an expert in them. However, I'm wondering if my EPA colleague here would like to take some of this question.
Well, I would just say that we do have a lot of programs. We have a lot of best practices to be shared, not just what's been done in the United States, but also in other countries, to provide incentives for green building and green infrastructure, and we would be happy to share that with the government of Indonesia. We also, in addition, I want to add to that, in addition to the incentives for the financial incentives, we also have best practices on technical practices for ports, for green buildings, etc., that we also are happy to share.
My name is Peyton Deeks, and I work on the Coral Triangle Support Partnership. This conversation has been very interesting, but I've been a bit dismayed about the lack of conversation about marine issues, excuse me, and how they relate to climate change. And attached to that, I think food security is quite interwoven with climate change issues in the marine environment. So as we're looking for future priorities, I wonder if the panel could speak to those priorities in the marine environment. And one of the priorities I would like to suggest is Indonesia ratifying the permanent secretariat of the Coral Triangle Initiative on coral reefs, fisheries, and food security. I don't know if anyone has any comments on that. Thank you.
I'll start, and our NOAA colleagues will follow. I'm John Hansen with USAID here. We have a fairly robust marine conservation program that is focused on two different vectors. One on the governance side, and that's helping the government protect up to 20 million hectares of conservation areas, and another one on the fisheries side, trying to work with the Marine Affairs and Fisheries Ministry on improving productivity, profitability, reducing productivity, and improving the sustainable and actually the maximum economic yield of the fisheries of Indonesia. It's the second largest fishery in the world, and the ambitions of the government are to make it the first, it's tough. You're going to try to do that and maintain the fisheries in a sustainable way. So we work very closely with the Marine Affairs and Fisheries Ministry in that. We work with the large NGOs who've been engaged in the Coral Triangle Initiative since its inception, and a very close partner of ours is NOAA in this regard, and together we're working on sustainable fisheries, ecosystem approaches to fisheries management, and economic variables.
Thank you, John. In addition to our joint work with USAID and other partners in the region in the Coral Triangle Initiative, NOAA has a pretty broad partnership on marine activities, and especially those that relate to climate change and impacts of climate change. We have an ocean climate observation partnership with the Ministry for Marine Affairs and Fisheries and with the EPPT on observations, analysis, and applications of these ocean climate observations and trying to see what is actually happening, like how are oceans being affected. And we also work together on ecosystem approaches for management, which can incorporate some of these impacts to climate change. In addition, I believe Kerri-Ann mentioned the impacts of ocean acidification, and that is something that we want to work on not only with Indonesia, but with all of our partners to address, because this really is a global problem, and it's going to impact food security, it's going to impact livelihoods, and it's going to impact the safety of people who are living in regions where you're going to see the impacts of ocean acidification. So those are just some of the ways that we are addressing it as NOAA, and we have a very broad partnership and look forward to working more with Indonesia.
From us, is the oceans and the fisheries is as important as the terrestrial issues. Right now, as Stacy also already mentions, our marine people is supposed to be here with us to explain about the comprehensive partnership they have with NOAA. But unfortunately, they have a meeting in Bali, and I think that that is show how good the partnership is, that everybody's going to Bali to discuss, including Stacy. I believe Stacy will leave as soon. But just to add on this, that Indonesian government is really concerned about ocean, and we would like to see the oceans and the climate change issue as much as the discussion that happened already in forestry. So maybe next time, when we have our marine and ocean fisheries people here, they can explain about the comprehensive partnerships. But I was sure that that is one of our priorities, our future priorities. Thank you.
There was a piece of the question about, was it ratification of an agreement? The Coral Triangle Agreement?
Yeah, that's a question that I have to ask to our ocean and marine people, but I will try to convey that to them.
Thank you. There was someone else previously. I think I'll go with the gentleman with his hand up here and then back to you.
Thank you. My name is Agus. I'm from the Society of ICT Society. Indonesia is Telematica. I'm interested to know if there is any initiative or project activity on green renewable energy, such as solar cell or wind turbine, and also probably if you can share any best practices, because in Indonesia the problem about the tax incentive, import tax is not very clear on this issue, and I think it's very important because especially if we are building a project in the villages where the electricity are not reliable. Thank you.
I'm from USAID as well, and so I will speak about USAID's partnership with the government of Indonesia on renewable energy in particular. There's one particular program called ICE, which is the Indonesian Clean Energy Development Program that we've been working on for several years. And the focus thus far has been on hydropower and biogas facilities as production of clean energy. We've been able to, we expect that this program will be able to avoid 4 million tons of CO2 from both the transportation and energy sectors. We can generate an additional 120 megawatts of clean energy installed, and then also is an opportunity to leverage $120 million in public and private resources towards these goals. Very strongly feel, as was discussed earlier today, that investing in low emissions and investing in development are the exact same goals here. It's all about low emissions economic development, and so this program specifically supports that at the national and local levels.
I'd like to also mention that the U.S. has been partnering with DMVI in the development of the Indonesian Climate Change Center. And one of the areas, program areas, is low emission development strategies. And renewable energy is a focus of that area of work. And the purpose of the Climate Change Center is to bridge policy and science. So a lot of the science that needs to be worked on in Indonesia needs to influence policy, and that's the goal of the Indonesian Climate Change Center. So we're also working closely on those issues.
One of the programs of the MCC is what we call it the green prosperity, and one of the components of the green prosperity is we do have not only on the policy side, but we have a luxury also actually to do some real or direct investment into renewable energy. So we're thinking of probably hydropower is a potential in some area in western part or eastern part of Indonesia, and the other technology will be what we're exploring is the biomass, for example, especially the degraded land, which is quite a lot in Indonesia, and we also kind of exploratory mode now with the other source of the energy like solar, biogas, biofuel.
I just wanted to reiterate the point that was made earlier about low emissions development and how all of this work that we are doing in partnership with the government of Indonesia is in support of the overall green growth strategy. And that in particular, we've been working with a number of different ministries, National Planning Ministry, and in several provinces, especially in North Sumatra. So this is a coordinated effort amongst the U.S. government.
Thank you. I just want to add what
Pierre just said, now we are in the preparation of 2 in-depth studies on the renewable energy investment, as well as the how we utilize the degraded land for crop to energy exercise by engaging not only university but also the key stakeholders on the ground.
I'd like to ask a little bit about the context in which many of the decisions regarding the environment and green economy has been made. And there are 2 issues here. One is the current master plan, which is a very ambitious growth plan with 2 phases. The first one with massive investment in infrastructure, and the second phase where we're supposed to turn the infrastructure corridors into economic corridors. And just about everybody feels that in the first phase what we will get is a very sharp increase in economic inequality. And only if the second phase is successful will you actually get economic growth percolating down to the majority. So we may well have a case of not green prosperity but green disparity here, if we're not very careful. And the second important context in which much of the decision on the environment needs to be made is Indonesia's policy-making process. What we actually have here is quite a sharp decline of many of the traditional policy-making processes and institutions, and a very large number of ad hoc institutions which have been created, including in the President's office, in the Vice President's office, other advisory bodies. And there is no guarantee that they will survive after 2014. In this context, my question is, how do we balance the production of all these wonderful studies, which our international experts continue to produce, with trying to get research moving into policy? What should we do from an environmental perspective to make that happen? Thank you.
For the questions, I think just to give you a perspective from our side, at least we are in the process to establish a more comprehensive framework. One on the action, as Agus, Purnomo and Rachmat mentioned, that we achieved a significant policy framework by stipulations of national greenhouse gases emission reduction plan. Second, on the governance issues, we also introduced the national greenhouse gases system, which means that we also introduce the different approach, not only top-down, but also the bottom-up. And then still we are in the process how to develop a kind of the market and non-market mechanisms into this framework. I think the challenge is that shifting from the, let's say, non-greenhouse gases regime into the greenhouse gas regime is quite a big challenge. For example, in terms of data integration from different sources, this is really critical issues, and because only we have a more precise assessment on the information that we see that the more credible policy. Some other example is forest and peatland is one of the big target for the emission reductions. Looking at the challenge of even for peatland definitions, it also leads to very complex situations on the ground. So now we are also working with the National Agency for BIG, National Geographic Agency, to develop what we call as the One Map initiatives, that we integrate all different sources of information and come up with the one comprehensive data set. So with regard to the balance between the research and also the policy, I think through the partnership, we are also working and then also engage not only the scientific communities, but also the policymakers and NGOs. Take the example of the peatland. Now we just released the peatland definition as a basis for the sustainable peatland management. Second, now we also elaborate more on the incentive issues on peatland, on the greenhouse gases inventory on peatland as part of the governance, as well as other issues into the more broader perspective of spatial planning and low emission development scenarios. So that's, of course, we are not so sure in 2014, but I think we still have time until 2014 to engage all the key stakeholders to just speak up on these issues. And I think in the coming weeks we also plans to have that engagement. I think my last point is that for the related issues to the MP3E, I think now we are also working with we are part of the Kadin National Chambers and Commerce to initiate what they call is Green Infrastructure Summit. They are planning to have that in February next year, 2014. And what I heard from Kadin, they also start to evaluate this existing plan, and then there will be a national dialogue this month to list out what is under the MP3E is supposed to be can be applied the green investment perspective on that.
What's next?
Just to add something on the question on MP3 AE, currently to synchronize development and also economic development and the environment. Currently in Bappenas, in the planning agency, we have a unit specifically working on the MP3KI. K is related to kemiskinan or poverty. So this is the unit that is new, but is trying to actually to translate what's already on the MP3AE to development issues. And we also have a new unit under the Ministry of Economics that specifically looking at the aspect of environment, the AMDAL, the environment impact and everything. So the synergizing, the synchronizing between each new policies is already happened. And then I think that this is part of what Agus Purnomo said on his presentations about getting to smooth hand over from this current government to the next government, even if all the, as you say, the ad hoc unit that he has now in his office is no longer be there after 2014. Thank you.
My fear, of course, is that the train has already left the station. If you look at the timing of the infrastructure investment in the MP3E, it's already several years into this program. So the fact that we are now setting up, ways to develop mechanisms whereby the priorities of the MP3E can be put in some kind of strategic plan is really a bit back to front. The second thing is we have conducted a whole series of meetings in many regions where even basic awareness of MP3E is very small. And in some cases, like East Kalimantan, when we went and said, well, you're supposed to be a natural resource hub, their main comment was, we don't want to be a natural resource hub, and nobody ever consulted us. So I think that, if either we say that the MP3E is purely a political speech, and it should not be taken seriously, that's one position that many people take. Or if we say that it is a definite plan and we want to accelerate growth, then there is a huge urgency of putting some of the issues that, some of the frameworks that Bappenas and others are trying to do. Otherwise, once the infrastructure investment is already there, it's lumpy investment. There is no point coming up with designs once the investment's already made. Then we'll be simply looking at a whole series of white elephant projects which really don't green the economy very much. So that's the concern that I think people have.
Thank you for your comment. Do you want to respond?
I think this is why the Kadin tried to start the conversations of what happened with the MP3I. As far as I understand to the process is that they would like to see directly from the government, from the presidents, because if you look at all the progress, it's still quite less than expected. So one of the reasons from the Kadin side, they would like to share what is happening on the ground. But at the same time, the government also will share, for example, on the issues of land acquisition and those kind of things. This is really, one of the step forward that Kadin would like to see. What is the status of the MBTKI? But I believe this is not a speech for MBTKI. This is really a framework for the infrastructure. But with regard to the green framework, I think the coordinating Ministry of Economic also is trying hard to also to include into the process of the how to put the green issues in the infrastructure. And at the same time, as we also can see from the initiative under the MCCC and also others now, they are trying not only exercising on the scientific or developing a kind of the project-based activities, but this is a driving towards to convince how the investment is really, green investment is really needed for Indonesia in the future.
I'm not being standing on protocol to say it's a great honor for me to be invited to such could have been a bilateral consultation, which has turned now to a very open forum, which obviously is benefiting a lot of public audience, including me. And of course, we have also, between the United States of America and my country, a bilateral something like environmental and climate change. And I have a kind of thought that for the bilateral consultation, especially between a large developed country and a large developing country like China and Indonesia, the priority and the most possible achievements of such events could be derived more from like a strengthening of capacity building and enhancing technology transfer. In terms of my neighboring guy who has been calling for a government incentive for a company,
I'm coming back to him.
Yeah. Those developing countries could call for a kind of incentive instead of from the government, from more of a developed country who is having more resources in terms of technology and capacity and even more funds. Of course, it's not totally the picture nowadays, but still we have a lot more to communicate. So I have a general remark, I have general comments that in order to make such happening worthwhile and more meaningful, and we should have a lot of more concentration on technology transfer. The government should play a role to organize, to ease even the private entrepreneurs to join in for an easier technology transfer and the capacity building, so that this kind of flying over, making big hotels, reservations could be more, we think could be more we deserve it. Yeah, I had a kind of fear, yeah. Because flying over and making the reservation, having a lot of, when I come back from the breakover, I found even my half bottle has been changed. So, yeah, this is not really that so green. So I have a kind of temporary thought that I would share with the audience and the panel. Yeah, thank you, David.
Thank you, and I don't think you have to feel shy at all about a third country comment, because the comprehensive partnership is supposed to be a partnership that addresses global problems and problems with third countries, as well as strictly bilateral. Anybody would like to respond?
Well, I'd like to thank our Chinese colleague for these comments. I agree that this is a problem that must be solved globally, and so in our work that we do bilaterally, both with the government of Indonesia, with the government of China, and in the region in collaboration with one another, that these are all very important topics to be addressed in consultation with one another. In terms of your comments specifically on emphasizing technology transfer and capacity building, these are elements of engagement that our negotiators within the U.S. government continue to be engaged on. And then from my perspective, as the head of climate change for USAID, a major focus for us in terms of all of the work that we do, both in mitigation and adaptation, all of which is very strongly linked with economic growth, is capacity building and ensuring that the many layers of capacity building are being considered along with access to technology. So I concur with your comments. Would you like to respond?
Thank you for raising the issues. Of course, for us, the issues is not only the issues between, let's say, developed and developing countries as a political issues, but I think at the same time, how we use these issues to leverage any initiatives at national and subnational, given the challenge on the ground. So from government side, we also closely working with not only limited to national government, but also with the subnational government attached to more global network. For example, Indonesian associations of mayors are working with the ICLEI at the international level. So the mayors are looking at more concrete on the ground, and then how we build the capacity at the subnational level, and then at the same time linked to the global issues like the low emission development scenarios. And I think the other issues for most of the cases, we need to have a very convincing exercise on the ground. For example, when you say low emission development scenarios, how it concept apply on the ground. A lot of things, a lot of technical issues on the ground. So sharing the information is really a critical element. So that's why we are happy to have this kind of partnership that can also enrich us with some good ideas, inspiring ideas, as well as, I mean, it's not limited to the government to government. From business, for example, we are closely working with WBCSD, Sustainable Council on the Business, and a lot of also get a feedback from the investment side.
Yes, and then we're going to conclude.
I was just going to add one thing on the technology cooperation question, and just to start by saying we have indeed with China a wide range of bilateral cooperation for like this, the strategic and economic dialogue. In my particular field, we have a bilateral MOU on combating illegal logging. But just to mention this technology transfer and cooperation area, as a lot of you know, next week and the week after, the APEC Senior Officials Meeting is here in Indonesia, and the Leaders Summit will be in the fall, and then next year APEC will be hosted by China. And that is a large part of what is going on in APEC, I think, across a number of sectors. the needs and the obstacles for increasing technology investment and cooperation and transfer vary a lot across different sectors, telecommunications, biotechnology, all sorts of things. And that is in particular a forum where we try to work on those things in a regional context. And Indonesia is showing a lot of leadership on this this year, and I know China is already looking forward to next year and how to bring some of these themes forward. So just to flag that that's an area where we try to look at trade, investment, and environment issues in both oceans and terrestrial aspects in one pretty complicated but useful forum. Thank you.
We're needing to wrap up to keep on our closing time. Being from an NGO, I'm relatively more free than our government colleagues to say things without clearances. I keep coming back in my mind to the gentleman who had the problem with diesel. And it seems relatively easier to address problems regarding China than it is to address problems regarding the Ministry of Finance in Jakarta. So I know this is outside the box, but I appeal to the panel to try informally or some other way to help him get his meeting with the Ministry of Finance, because it cannot come from him only. If the endorsement of the environmental people said, look, this is an environmental issue, but it can only be solved by finance, or put finance on your working group or something, I think he's got an issue that needs to be heard. Any final comment, Will, and then we're going to close.
Can I
let the gentleman respond first, because it's right on the point.
I'm still on track because the gentlemen, all of here, from the government side, from the American side, from the China side, we are working with an American company that manufactures electric bus engine. And then the Chinese government is helping us on the finance. Bank Exim of China. However, there are certain stipulations that we have to meet. Okay. Now, this is a serious issue that Indonesians are facing. This is the capital city, and it has registered to be the worst air polluted city in the world, if not number one, but top 10.
Mexico.
Okay? We need all the help we can get, not only taxes. We actually, if we can get American support, we're talking about collaboration, partnership collaboration. We have partnership collaboration with China, we have partnership collaboration with America. Now, it so happened that I connect these two giant countries. You know, this American manufacturer is very interested in helping us. They're also trying to get tax incentive, like export tax or something like that. And the Chinese government is helping us on the finance side, because they're going to build the body of the buses. You see. So what I'm trying to say is that this is a real project that you can see, that you can touch. Not only talking about study. We have done many studies, I'm not saying wasting money, that's not the right words, but lots of money, hundreds of $millions are poured in every year from many countries, from Japan, from America, Germany, everyone is supporting air pollution. Everybody's talking about it. Every study has been done. But let's do something real about it, you know. Can you imagine if 12,000 buses, let's say only 50% of the buses use gas-powered engine or electricity-powered engine, imagine how much pollution we can reduce. Thank you very much.
Will, you get the last word. Please make it brief.
Yeah, Will Tesrolo, Library of Congress. To my Indonesian colleagues, I'm curious, how do you engage the staff of the DP Air Day and the staff of the DP Air? Because as politicians come and go, the staff remains. So how do you get them more conscious about what you're trying to accomplish?
To be honest with you, the level of engagement with DP Air is not, so high compared to others. But we are also engaged in what the DPR established, the Green Economy Caucus. So we are working with the Pak Satria from who is in charge of this Green Economy Caucus. But at the same time, we also working with the Globe initiatives when all the Parliament also engage the process. So through that initiatives, we also join the initiative. For DPRD is really we rely on the some areas in the provincial government like East Kalimantan and Central Kalimantan to work with the local key stakeholders. So, for example, with the planning agencies, the REDD plus task force at the local level, as well as the NGOs. Through this process, they engage I think the DPRD.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank the panelists and let's thank ourselves for the participation and all the great questions. Thank you very much.